This is the Aunty and Brain Tumours talk show. It's a show full of informative chat and inspirational messages. The Aunty and Brain Tumours talk show on podcast.
Hi, my name's Claire. My son Jake was diagnosed with a non-cancerous brain tumour on the cerebellum when he was only 4 years old. Luckily, he did survive and he turns 24 on the 10th of March. But when he was only 4, we really didn't think we were ever going to see him again. There weren't really any symptoms to his brain tumour, which is the most worrying thing. So when he turned 4 in the March, and within probably by like the May, June time, he started throwing up in the mornings, which we thought was really weird. But he was at like a little preschool groups that he went to every morning, and he was really sick and he kept being sick, like actually throwing up. And this happened for quite a few weeks, and we went to the GP and said to the GP, this doesn't really seem right. And then he kept putting his head like really on the side like this. And a friend of mine whose son had been through major heart surgery when he was born, so she'd spent like a considerable amount of time in hospital for like 2 years, she said to me, something's not right with him. Now, bear in mind, at the time I was quite young. I was quite a young mum, so I perhaps wasn't as experienced or as assertive as what I am now. So my friend had said to me, that's not right. He's holding his head to the side. That's really not right. And he was also getting some headaches as well. So we booked a GP's appointment. We went to the GP and they just, I don't know whether it's because I was young, or maybe because I looked a lot younger than what I was. They just thought, just being a neurotic mum, exaggerating it or something. So that I didn't really feel like the doctor took it seriously. By this time, it was sort of end of July, beginning of August. So we went back to the GP, and again, they were just like, we'll refer you to like a pediatrician at the hospital, which, how long, bearing in mind this was in 2005, so it's not as horrific as what it is now at the hospital, but there's still a wait for a pediatrician's appointment. So yeah, we were just it was a bit of a waiting game. And my friend just sort of kept saying to me, there really is something really wrong here. You really need to sort of get this sorted. And by this point, where his head was sort of tilted slightly to the side to start off with, it was sort of really, really almost like his ear was touching his shoulder. It was, it was a considerable, tilted head. And we kind of, I say the word jokingly, but I don't know, perhaps more worryingly was the point. We were saying to him, put your head on straight all the time. And, he was getting migraines to the point that he would just go to sleep for hours, like 2 or 3 hours in the middle of the day, which, I know children can sleep in the day until they're sort of maybe 5 or so, but I don't know. But between the kind of head tilt, the migraines and the throwing up, I actually had a really good relationship with my health visitor at the time. So I spoke to her about it and just said, look, this is what my concerns are. I don't really think the doctor's taking it seriously. Can you kind of push to get us an appointment at the hospital a bit quicker, or can you do something? Within, I think, a week of us having that conversation, we got a letter through from hospital with an appointment to see a pediatrician, and the appointment was really quick. It was literally like 2 weeks later. So by this point, it was like August, the end of August. Now, we had actually gone on holiday in the August, and on that holiday, like my son was so sick that to the point that he literally threw up in the street, and we embarrassingly had to just leave it there because we didn't have any way of cleaning it up, and we didn't really know what to do, and we were obviously quite shocked. So sorry, Spain, we've left sick in the street, sorry. But I think when you're going through these situations, you don't, like, it's just really hard to, I think it's really hard to deal with because you don't really know, and nobody's giving you any answers, and nobody's really taking it seriously. So the day that we saw the pediatrician, which I think it was actually like the 25th of September or something, it was on the Friday, and we said we saw the pediatrician for the very first time, first thing on the Friday morning. I think our appointment was like 9 o'clock in the morning, and they said, they did some different things with him, like, stand on one leg, or, touch your finger to your nose. And just some of the things that they were saying, it actually really highlighted to me that there was a big problem, because when the pediatrician was saying to my son, oh, stand on one leg, and he literally couldn't stand on one leg. He would just fall over. Now, I know a lot of people haven't really got great balance, but you would be able to stand on one leg for at least 2 seconds, but he couldn't even do that. And when they were saying touch your nose like this, he was just sort of like, he didn't even know where his nose was, which I was sat in the doctor's room like, what the hell is going on? I didn't really know what to think. And obviously the pediatrician didn't really say too much. He was just asking lots of questions, like what was happening. And we obviously said about being sick, and the fact that his head was tilted to the side, which she could quite plainly see that for herself. And just, yeah, we were really worried. So we left that appointment. She didn't really say too much. She just said, oh, I think I'm going to look into this and run some tests. And she called us back. She called me on the phone later that day at like 3 PM and said, I really need you to come back to the hospital. And basically he had a MRI scan, which showed that he had a brain tumor. And later that day at sort of 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock in the evening, we were on our way to the Radcliffe Infirmary in Oxford. Again, this was 20 years ago, so the John Radcliffe wasn't as it is today. It was in the process of being built at the time, the new part of it. So there we were, arriving at the Radcliffe Infirmary in Oxford, sort of late on a Friday evening, not really knowing what's going on. Obviously, they're telling us we were waiting to see a sort of specialist neurologist, and they were telling us, your son has a brain tumor. He has water on the brain. So interestingly, it was only because of the water on the brain that we actually found out he had a brain tumor, because there weren't actually any symptoms to the brain tumor. The symptoms we were seeing were actually because of the water on the brain. It was the pressure it was putting in his head that was making his head tilt to the side. Oh, his eyes were doing this flicky thing as well, which again, when we were at the doctor's office, I didn't really notice that before, but it was actually really, really obvious when I probably noticed it a little bit, but I don't know. I guess I have 2 other children, which is not an excuse or anything, but I think when you lead a really busy life, and especially when your GP is not really taking it seriously, you think, oh, it's maybe not that serious, but it was very serious. And the doctor at the Radcliffe Infirmary said to us, if your son wasn't here today, in a week's time, he wouldn't be here at all. He would have died. So that for us was just utter disbelief, I suppose. Just how do you react when someone tells you your 4-year-old could have been dead in a week, and it's only almost feel like by chance, or the fact that my friend was so insistent that something was wrong, and the fact that I spoke to my health visitor, who I feel stepped in and did something. But if it was down to the GP, my son would be dead. So I mean, it just makes you feel very grateful that I did speak up, and just that we got into the hospital on time. So on the Monday, he had the surgery, which was major brain surgery, had the tumour removed. He had part of his brain removed, and they also drained off the water on the brain. So he has a massive scar, 6-inch scar on the back of his head, another scar from where the tube was that drained the water on the brain. And yeah, it's one of those situations that no parent ever wants to find themselves in. And I'm truly grateful that my health visitor, supported what I was saying. I'm truly grateful to have an amazing friend who took what I was saying seriously. He obviously woke up in the hospital, and he was in intensive care for like 24 hours. And then as a precautionary measure, apparently they do that with everybody, he was in hospital for like 2 weeks, and then he came home, and he obviously knew that he was because he was in a lot of pain. That when the first 4 days, I don't even think he really woke up that much. But then obviously as he started to get better, by the time it was 2 weeks, you wouldn't have known there was anything wrong with him, because he was running around the hospital like a normal 4-year-old. It's funny how kids bounce back from these things really quickly. But I think it's just one of those things that we've always been really open and honest with him. We've got pictures of his scar, because obviously it's on the back of his head, so he can't see the back of his head. So we've got pictures of the scar, and we've always spoken to him about it. And he doesn't remember a lot. He remembers, like, the age he is now, his memories of that time are just that he was throwing up a lot. That's what he really remembers. And we've just always been honest and open with him. And obviously, because since he had the brain tumor, even though he was only 4 at the time, he had regular MRIs every year, or twice a year to start off with, and then annually right up till he was about 10 or 11. So his balance was really quite bad for the first at least 14 years. He would sometimes stumble and stuff. So initially, but I think where it was 20 years ago now, I think, I mean, it's affected his eyesight because the pressure at the back of his eye affected his vision. So he did have to start wearing glasses after that happened, which he didn't wear glasses before that. But overall, I would say he's pretty much able to do anything that anybody else is able to do. And I think even his balance is, I mean, he's never going to be a gymnast or anything, but yeah, he's very lucky that he's more or less escaped unscathed. One of the things that I think I am guilty of, like, when something so tragic happens to your child and you become so close to losing your child, and for any parent, that's literally the worst thing that could ever happen to you in life, is to lose a child. And I think when you come so close to losing your child, you want to wrap them in cotton wool. And I absolutely I have done that a bit, to be honest. And I do worry about him more than my other children. You know, he gets the slightest little headache and I'm like, oh my God, what's going on? Do we need to go to the hospital? And you know what? That's only natural. And I think it would be odd if you didn't worry after that, to be honest. So, but I think kids are so resilient, aren't they, though? They just don't know any different. Whereas as an adult, I think when adults go through, you know, tragic things like this, I guess there's almost an element of, oh, I must be sick. Oh, this could affect my life. So I think a lot of it is kind of maybe mindset, because when you're a child, you don't have the capacity to think, oh my God, this is going to change my life and I'm not going to be able to do anything or whatever, because you're 4. You don't have the brain's capacity to think things like that. Whereas as a grown up, I think our mindset is, oh, this has made me really sick. I might die. And that can actually have quite a negative impact on the outcome or what your prognosis is. And I think because Jake was so young, he was only 4, he didn't really know any different. Whereas maybe if the child is slightly older, but I think it's the people around them that make a difference. So if the child is a bit older, like over the age of 10, so they've got a bit more awareness of what's happening, I think as long as the parents are really positive and really, I mean, obviously you don't want to make kind of false promises or anything to children. I don't agree with that. But, you know, if you're really positive with them and keep that positive mindset, then I think that's really important, because, you know, Jake has gone on to lead a perfectly normal life. He's like a manager in a store. He's trying to get into games design, and, you know, he lives a normal sort of life that any 24-year-old lad is out there. Well, the good parts, not the bad parts. He's a good boy. He's sort of out there living a normal life like any other young person living a life. And I think, you know, be honest with children, let them know what's going on, and just keep that positive mindset. I really think a positive mindset. And I know it's hard because, you know, I've been there, and you're looking at your baby thinking, oh my God, I could lose them, or what's going to happen next, or, you know, and you don't know, because we didn't. That day we arrived, that Friday, I'll never ever forget that day as long as I live. You know, we arrived that day with our tiny little 4-year-old, and my son is really small he was really small. He's quite small now, but at 4, he was tiny for 4 years old. And there I was cradling my tiny little boy and thinking, oh my God. And the day he went in for surgery, I was literally sobbing. I was sobbing, going, oh my God, I might not see him again. You know, and that's something that you never ever forget that. You never forget that. Even 20 years later, I will never forget how I felt on that day when he went in for brain surgery. And, you know, that's normal to feel like that. It is normal to feel worried, and it is normal to be worrying about their future, and are they going to survive, and what does their future look like? And we are very lucky that we did get the medical treatment when we did, and we are very lucky that the outcome has been really positive. So I guess just stay positive. Parents always know best. You know your children, and you know their behaviors and when something's out of the ordinary. So I think if you're seeing something out of the ordinary for your child, no matter how minor it might be, you know, like what if they suddenly start dropping things when they're not normally clumsy? Or what if they suddenly start tripping over or slipping downstairs, or, you know, whatever little minor detail it is that you're seeing that is completely not normal behavior for your child, I think just go to your GP.
This is the Aunty and Brain Tumours talk show. It's a show full of informative chat and inspirational messages. The Aunty and Brain Tumours talk show on podcast.